We are very happy to welcome Maria Finitzo, who's calling from Chicago. Hi, Maria.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Maria is the director of this film. My name is Greta Stocklassa, and I'm a Czech-Swedish filmmaker based in Prague. And I will be moderating this Q&A, but I will be happy to ask your questions, the viewers' questions. So first, the technical part of this Q&A will be in English. So please ask your questions in English, because I'm not a very good translator. And also there are two ways of asking a question. One is to write it here under the button Q&A, and I will read it out loud and Maria will answer it. Or you can raise your hand, not physically though, but through the button as well. And then you will actually be able to say your question out loud. But by doing that, please realize that you will become a part of this footage because we're recording this Q&A. So by this, you're giving your permission. Thank you. So first of all, Maria, I would like to start by asking one question, because the film to me is about the connection between female sexual satisfaction and female empowerment. And you're showing it on one example, which is the clitoris, and how by erasing it from the biology books or by hiding it, you're actually maybe taking women's power away. So I would like you to tell us what was the genesis of this film? How did you, the first inciting moment for you when you decided this is a topic I would like to make a film about?
Well, I was looking for a topic for my next film in about 2012, I think. And I read a book by a writer named Daniel Bergner called The Sexual Desire, What Do Women Want? And in the book, he went around the US and in Canada and interviewed scientists who were studying female desire. And at the end of the book, not to dismiss it all just so simply, but at the end of the book, the upshot was women have as robust a sex drive as men. They're simply told lies about it to reinforce patriarchal structures. And I thought that was pretty interesting since this was in 2012 and I grew up in the 60s. And so I thought things had changed a lot. And I had a daughter who at that time was maybe in high school or college. Maybe by then she was in college. And so what was interesting to me is, here's a scientific fact: women have as robust a sex drive as men. And yet that's information that most girls and women can't access because there are so many things that get in the way of women having agency over their bodies and their desire. And so that was, for me, what the most interesting part of the whole question was why in this day and age are women still told lies about their bodies, their desire, where their pleasure comes from, and what are all the different ways that society, medicine, academia, religion, politics, and culture still punish women for what is a function of being a human. One of the most intimate expressions of our humanity, right, is our sexual desire, and yet women are punished for it. So I was very interested in making a film that looked at all of those ways, all of the ways things got in the way of women having the same freedom that men are allowed.
Right. And so how did you continue with, when you had this topic? How did you know where to start, how to focus?
So that's a really great question, because there can be a really interesting idea, but how to make it into a film is usually the hardest part. So I knew about the work of Lisa Diamond. She's one of the scientists in the film. Her work studies the sort of sexual fluidity that she sees in women over 20 years, right? And then changing their gender orientation based on who they're attracted to, right? It's very groundbreaking research 20 years ago. Now it's very, like, the world is caught up to Lisa Diamond. And then I went looking for other people who were working in this space. And so I easily found the work of Sophia Wallace, the conceptual artist who had created a full body of work called Cliteracy, the 100 Natural Laws. And so, you know, right away I had at least two people who were beginning to ask questions around what's going on with women having freedom and desire over their own desires and agency over their own bodies, really all people other than sort of heterosexual white men. And so I started filming with them, and Sophia introduced me to Stacey Dutton, who was the professor at Agnes Scott College, who had unearthed that in the majority of college level anatomy textbooks, the complete depiction of the clitoris is left out. And so sometimes completely, but the internal part of the clitoris has just been erased. And so that to me was shocking. That this was in 2015, I think I met her, that women's anatomy doesn't meet the bar for truth in anatomy textbooks. And that's not an accident, that's on purpose. So here was a situation where if you wanted information about your body, you can't get it. Because if you don't pick up the right textbook, you're not going to find accurate information. And she was the third person we added. And then because at that point when we were doing some filming, I wanted to know how their work was resonating in the lives of just kind of everyday people, right? So women that don't necessarily talk so easily about the clitoris and their desire, the way Sophia and Lisa Diamond and Stacey Dutton did, because I wanted to see how it was impacting all of us. And so I went looking for the 5 women who are in the film, and I wanted those 5 voices to be diverse in as much as they could be. So both, they ranged in age from 23 to 40, they were different religions, they were different races, they were different gender orientations. And that was sort of the parameter I gave myself. And then we added at the end, about a year left of filming, someone referred me to T. Chang, the industrial designer. And what I loved about her work was that she talked about the role of industrial design in our lives. So when we have beautiful products that we use, our iPhones, our computers, whatever they are, our cars, we feel good about ourselves. And she pointed out that vibrators, which had been mostly designed by men, were sort of made of, janky materials, and they were jokes, and they had rabbit ears on top of them, and they were made all with the male gaze, and that she really wanted to change those products so that when women used vibrators, they could feel good about their pleasure and their bodies. And so I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at just another way that women are sort of told that either their pleasure isn't worth it, or is shameful, or is something that they need to hide. And so she makes these beautiful vibrators, including one that's a necklace that you can wear out if you want. So that's how I found all 9 of the women in my film. And it's never a great idea to put 9 people in a film, but I did it anyway.
No, that's impressive, because it's a very complicated structure. The more protagonists you have, how to make all their stories intervene and graduate. So, and you mentioned this this industrial designer. I was a little surprised when she was talking about the vibrators, because to me first it was like this approach was more hiding the pleasure, because you could see that they looked like a lipstick, or regular objects that shouldn't be too explicit. So I was like, this, because it's a little contradictory to how the other women were talking about sexuality. But then when she actually was she showed she was doing a necklace out of it, that you should actually be proud of wearing it. It clicked, and I realized what her role is. So it was a very interesting choice of characters. How did you? What was the process of getting to know these women? did you read about them? Were some of them your acquaintances before you decided to start filming with them?
No, I didn't know any of them. And so when I make a film, I usually begin, I've done research about the people I'm going to call up and try and meet, but I haven't usually met any of them. I did in 2013, because I had to be in New York, go and meet with Sophia Wallace, because I thought that was really important. She was going to play a major role in the film, where I wanted her to. And so I wanted her to meet me, and I wanted to meet her as well. It's important when you invite to be a subject in a film that everybody has the same understanding of what that means, and that's always very important. And so she and I met, and we liked each other a lot, and I explained kind of what I was going to do. She showed me a picture of the internal clitoris, which was the first time I'd seen what the internal clitoris looked like as well. I was pretty old, and you get kind of a vibe with somebody. And then I said to her, I'm going to go away, and it'll take me a while to raise money. And it did. So I didn't come back until 2016. And when you start filming with people who are doing what is a very generous thing, saying yes to you, that they will put their lives and their work in your film, because it takes a lot of time for them. I mean, they're not paid to be in the film, and I show up with a camera crew and kind of invade whatever they're doing, and so it's a very generous thing to do. What I was most surprised about, and particularly with the 5 women who were not professional women dealing with sexual desire or research or any of that, they were just women that I had brought on. I was very surprised at how willing they were to share intimate details with their lives. So in the film, a lot of the interviews you see are actually the first time I ever met those women. And so they were very at ease and very willing to talk about this. And one woman said to me, we never get a chance to talk about this stuff. I am so eager to have this conversation. So that was one of the big surprises. And then I think just what was really a wonderful experience for all of us working on it is that all 9 of us realized how important it was to begin a conversation around this topic, and that holding our own experiences in and not sharing them was a way of keeping us silent. And so that's why the process of making the film was, I think, for all of us, empowering. I learned a lot. My editors learned a lot. My music composer learned a lot. It was just a coming together of women and men in a way that said, wow, this is a really amazing film to be making, and we can't believe it hasn't been made before.
For how long did you shoot the film? Because you mentioned 4 years.
I started shooting in 2016. I didn't really stop until late 2019, so about 3 years. And we edited for, I don't know, 2 years on and off. This film was very difficult to edit because it's essentially an essay about female sexual desire and women's empowerment. And so crafting that essay took a lot. It's like putting together a puzzle. Sometimes pieces will fit together, but they aren't really the best pieces to fit together. So we had to keep changing things and moving things around. And I was really grateful that we were able to use Sophia Wallace's 100 Natural Laws as sort of a scaffolding, a thematic scaffolding. And that was helpful to us.
What would you say was the most difficult part of the process? Since it was a project that took a couple of years, you mentioned financing, for instance. Could you tell me more about how you financed the film?
So I had a lot of trouble financing the film. I thought initially that if I was making a film about female sexual desire, that people would throw money at me. But when I connected that topic to women's empowerment and equality, then that made it a film about social issues rather than just the objectification of women as sexual objects. That was the difference. And so, like many filmmakers, I had to begin filming with my own money. And it was a hard film to pitch to people, because in the beginning, when I would start to talk about it, there is a perception, at least in the United States, that if you're talking about female pleasure, it's pornographic. And so people were afraid of the topic. They were also afraid of a film that used the word clitoris and talked about the clitoris, because nobody ever talks about it. Nobody wants to say the word. Nobody uses the word clitoris in a complete sentence except me. And so people were afraid of it, right? And so it took a long time for me to get the correct language for how to explain the film. Interestingly enough, the major funders of the film are two men. One has a foundation, the other was an equity funder. The traditional film funders turned me down repeatedly. We had a great Kickstarter campaign, and that's was also really wonderful when that happened, because it sort of reinforces your hope and belief that there's an audience for the film. And people were like, we can't wait to see this film. And, so that's how the film was funded. It was mostly not funded. And, of course, like a lot of filmmakers, the film has a lot of debt, which we're hoping to at least get rid of some of.
And so you mentioned the two main financiers were male or men. So how has this film been perceived, or how have people reacted to seeing this film so far?
Well, because we had this pandemic, and that robbed all of us from these in-person screenings. What I hear a lot is I get emails from people who've seen the film in festivals that have gone online. And the emails have ranged from people who are 12 years old to a man who was 80 years old. And he sent me an email and he said, I've been married 50 years to the same woman. I love her very much. I thought I knew everything there was to know about women. I watched your film. I realized I don't. I love your new kind of feminism. And you go from that response all the way down to men, women, people who I don't, non-binary, everyone saying, thank you for this film. We love it. I was able to talk to my mother about it. I got 2 emails from a mother and daughter, both of them saying how when they watched it separately, they were able to sit down and talk to each other, which is really a wonderful thing. Because when I first met Sophia Wallace, saw what my clitoris looked like, or the clitoris looks like, I realized I hadn't had a conversation with my daughter either. And I'm kind of a with it woman, and I felt really bad about that. So the film has really reached an amazing audience. I still hear from people all the time. Some people say, I was really kind of worried about watching your film, but it was funny and accessible, and I understood things so much more now. And so the response has been overwhelmingly positive. I haven't received any single email, tweet, or text that said, I hate this film, why did you make it? Not one.
That's great.
Maybe that's coming, I don't know.
That's right. No, I really hope that this Q&A won't lead to angry emails at least. But it's interesting that you said that as soon as it's that it was difficult finding money for this film, because as soon as it's about female empowerment, it becomes a social issue. Because one would say that after the Me Too movement and everything, there might be exactly the right point when to start making these kind of films. So it's interesting that you say that you still found some obstacles on the way.
Well, one of the men in the film, the only man, well, not the only guy, but one of Sophia's friends, the artist, said that the world finds sexually empowered women frightening. And that's not a new thought, right? That's something that, you see in Greek mythology, right? Like we have the stories of these powerful women, and instead of them being powerful women, they're horrible women with snakes for hair, and all the different ways that we subvert women when they're powerful and have agency, right? We make them evil. And that's still the case. We want women to be sexy. We want them to be sexual. We want them to allow their bodies to be objectified. but we really don't want them to be sexually empowered. And as he says very well, if you're a heterosexual man, you're worried that a woman with that kind of agency won't settle for you. And one of the things that the film takes a lot of its themes from the writing of Audre Lorde, uses of the erotic. And in that essay, she says that once women become aware of that power within their bodies, not sexual, the power of the erotic, it's a life force. Once they become in touch with that, they won't settle for less. They'll expect more of themselves. And that power is a way, it's not just about pleasure, it's also a way of talking about a world that is not only not misogynistic, but not racist as well. And so there's a lot of power there. And what's sad to me is that that power has to be seen as something that takes away from someone else when it really doesn't. It's just allowing people to feel their full potential and to realize their full potential.
I guess the protagonists in the film have seen the film. Could you tell me their reactions to?
So all of the 9 women in the film saw it when it's kind of at picture lock, but it's not polished and finished, because I do that first before anyone else has seen it, because if there's something in the film that bothered them or they wanted to talk about, I want to give them that opportunity. And the 4 main experts, if you will, Sophia, Stacy, Lisa, and T, all liked the film a great deal. I mean, T had some minor comments and we were able to address them. I was most worried about the 5 women because they, to me, were most vulnerable. And I watched it with them. I sat behind them on a couch, and we all cried together, and all of them were really grateful and proud to have been in the film. And that was most important to me. I don't make films about people I don't like, and I don't make films in which I'm trying to take advantage of someone or exploit them. I don't do that. And I didn't want those 5 women in my film to feel in any way that I had. And so what the best part of the whole thing was at the end is, I think Jasmine said to me, I'm so proud to have been in this film. And all of them feel that way as well. So that's really important to me.
That's great to hear. I was going to ask how would you say that the film has what impact it has had on especially the 5 women on their.
Well, one of the things that happened was all of them, well, this isn't a film that had sort of a narrative arc in terms of following stories over a long period of time, but each of the women did have a narrative arc in the sense. I mean, Jasmine, when we first began the film, she was not public about the fact that she was a sex worker. And by the end of the film, she was very proud and happy to let that be known. Umnia I was worried when Umnia watched her wedding scene because she hadn't seen that footage ever. And it's a very powerful scene. And so when she watched it, she said to me, I thank you. This is such a release for me to have finally processed this. And, she had a lot of personal growth in terms of what she realized, the way she'd been in her life and having freedom to be who she is. Sunny said that she was finally able to realize how much she deserved when she was looking for someone to date and a man to date, and that all happened as part of the film. And so, Koriyama is already the most woke person I've ever met. And so she, but she also, I think by the time when I started with her in the beginning, by the time I ended, there was just an opening for all of them. Like they just felt more comfortable. So, and now they're all very vocal about having been in the film. And Becca has a blog that she blogs about. And so I'm sorry we couldn't have in-person screenings, but it's been a really good experience, I think, for all of us.
Thank you. I think that we're running out of time, but if there are any, I think I have asked, especially what I've been mostly interested in, but there will still be a chance to ask Maria some more questions at 9:25, 21:25 tonight, our time, Prague time. So yeah, so I will be happy to lead a further discussion later this evening. So thank you, Maria, for joining us on distance like this, and have a nice day, and see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.